curiosity is my number one attribute.
Good for you. Good for you. Curiosity makes people happy and healthy.
I did not know that. And all my jobs, Daga, people have continually told me to stay in my lane.
How did that make you feel?
Bad, very bad. But the truth is, I'm just completely curious about everything. How does the whole system work? How does the whole company work? How does another department function? How are they managing to deal with issues? I just can't stop myself. I'm so curious.
Hmm. Well, I think this is a great trait, and I'm so pleased and not surprised that this is your number one trait. Probably if we weren't curious, we wouldn't have even started that podcast, don't you think?
I
Right.
agree. I want to learn from you. You want to learn from me. We're both curious. So, what's the definition? You always have those definitions handy.
I do have one now. And also, I want to say that actually, curiosity in social sciences or in psychology is that term that is very difficult to define, and there are many debates around it. And even though there's a lot of research, people still find hard time to define exactly, to find dimensions and aspects of curiosity, etc. So I would suggest that for us today, we would agree that being curious means having a desire to learn, to know, and explore. How's that for you?
That sounds like my life.
Amazing. And how does being curious make you feel?
Happy to live.
Well, exactly. So that's something that I would agree with. Like being curious makes us feel alive. It's that trait that really brings the aliveness and the feeling of excitement and just the feeling of like, yeah, it's exciting to be alive.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that I can do in my brain when I'm frustrated with something. Okay, so I'll be very frustrated with the behavior of maybe someone on the road. And I will change my mindset to, I wonder why they would cut me off. Maybe they're late for a very important date. Maybe they're about to have a baby. And I start being more curious in my mind. And then that lets me just be like, you know what? There could be something really big going on in their life. I'm just going to let it go.
And that sounds like a very healthy way to deal with, especially with problems, because what you said is the curiosity in the moments of distress, in the moments of challenge, when things don't go our way. The number one thing that we can do, like how we engage curiosity in that moment, is that to actually challenge our assumptions and challenge our opinion and challenge the things that we take for granted. And that simple example with traffic, and that happens to probably all of us. Just being curious, it actually alleviates the anxiety that you could build up instead. So
Mhm.
that's being
Yeah.
curious is actually proven in research that it is a trait correlated to a lower level of anxiety. It's hard to say whether there's any cause or an effect, but definitely these two features go together, which, well, makes sense, right? It makes sense when we challenge our assumptions and curiosity is that, tolerating distress as well. The distress of not knowing, the distress of uncertainty, of things not going exactly our way.
So I'm a naturally curious person. What are ways that someone who's not naturally curious can build their curiosity?
So, first of all, I would encourage you to notice the moment that you certainly know something about a situation, a person, or a thing, and challenge that. Notice the moments when you are judgmental or critical about something, and just ask yourself, how do I know that? Where is it coming from? And it doesn't have to be that what you think or the opinion that you have is not true or is not valid. It's more about being open to other possibilities and just to explore life, people, places, situations, things in a more open way. Because in that process, when we challenge what we think we know, when we question things that we take for granted, and that, I would say, applies especially for people when we are curious about other people and we don't take for granted what we think we know about them and how they are, what they need, what they want, etc. This offers us flexibility in our relationships, and it also makes us more attractive to other people.
What?
Yes, and that also comes from research. So some scientists in social science field, they have found that people who show interest and curiosity about other people, they are perceived as more attractive, which makes sense because if I give my attention to you and I find you interesting and I'm curious and I want to deepen whatever it is that you have to say, well, you will like it probably. You will find me as the source of that pleasant experience of that you have about yourself as well. I want more of that. So this is, and when I say attractive, it doesn't have to be in a romantic or sexual way. It's just attractive as a person. No? I want to be closer to them, and it can ignite that reciprocity in our relationships. Another thing,
Yes.
another alleged health benefit, and I say alleged because still the research needs to be, there needs to be more research, but there is evidence in research that says that people who are curious, they engage more in the world, they engage more in what they're doing, and they engage more in relationships, they engage in their life. And because of that, they live longer, they are healthier.
Unbelievable. This is amazing. This is great news.
This is great news for you, Beth. So it sounds
I'm gonna
like,
live to 100. I'm gonna live to 150.
yay! Okay. I think it's also interesting to explore a little bit more what other traits are related to curiosity, why it is so beneficial for us to stay curious. So when we question and challenge what we know, and when we ask questions about things that we don't know, it also requires from us bigger tolerance for what is uncomfortable, for the unknown and the uncertainty. So because we are curious, this means that to explore what we don't know about, we do have to deal with a little bit of stress, a little bit of uncertainty until we know, right? Until that certainty and that knowledge will bring us some kind of satisfaction and completion, let's say.
Can I add a few things here?
Please.
So I just was listening to an interview with Nora Bateson, Dr. Nora Bateson. I think she's a doctor. Do you know her?
No, I don't.
You should totally, everyone needs to go research her. She's really amazing. Nora Bateson was discussing with someone on the podcast about how the number one thing everyone should be doing is working on our stress and comfort level tolerance, because we live in such a complicated world that's just spinning into more and more complication, and we need to be okay with uncertainty. Really, really just building our tolerance for uncertainty, because we are going to face that. And if we keep breaking down into stress, anxiety attacks because of uncertainty, we're just not going to be able to function as a species.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that that is a piece of curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
of being able to deal with that more because you're curious.
Mm-hmm. That sounds brilliant, and I couldn't agree more. And when we are curious and we think about a new situation or something that we never heard of and suddenly we need to step into, curiosity helps us to have that mindset of what can I learn from that situation? What can I learn from that person? What can I learn from that new event in my life, instead of what are the chances that I make mistake? Right? What are the chances that I'm going to ruin that relationship? What are the chances that I'm going to embarrass myself? So when we stay curious about the new and the uncertain, then we really step into that growth potential field instead of keeping ourselves small and withdrawing ourselves from that potential of, well, basically grow as a human being more than
Sci-fi. I
sci-fi.
think sci-fi is such a great mental experiment, thought experiments, right? So sci-fi takes the world, and people don't understand what sci-fi is really doing. And it says, what if we changed this one variable or we change four variables, right? They have to explain what those things are. And then they run a thought experiment, which, depending on the author's integrity, may or may not be very realistic. But that question of what if we lived on the moon, or what if we lived in space, like the expanse,
Mhm.
these are really great ways to keep expanding your mind. And I just want to do a plug for Sin, and we'll put it in the show notes because I'm going to say his name incorrectly. Even though I studied Mandarin for a long time, I still can't pronounce anything. So it's Cixin, Liu, and I'll put it in the show notes. So please check because I'm probably saying it and maybe even spelling wrong. But he wrote The Three Body Problem. Have you read that one?
I haven't.
He is a terrible writer. I mean, just a really bad writer. And anyone who's read it will admit that he's a terrible writer. He creates terrible characters. They're not growing as people. It's not about character development. It's about the ideas. He has so many interesting, crazy ideas constantly being put into the books. And I've read three or four of his books now, and I am such a huge fan. But it's all about the curiosity. He's continually asking, what if this and what if that?
Mhm.
And then he plays the scenario out. One of them, called Supernova Era, is he asks, what if everyone over 13 dies and the children have to run the world? What would that be like?
Mhm.
That's really
Mhm.
scary and bad.
Mhm.
But I think I think we can read books that expand our mind in different directions. I Fantasy to me doesn't play the same game. Fantasy is more about the hero
Mhm.
and being, fulfilling your dreams or having quests,
Mhm.
which is a different kind of what if I was really a prince
Mhm.
and I got taken off the throne and I grew up in a hut and now I have to rediscover my maybe this is also a good thing. I don't know. It doesn't tickle the same parts of my brain,
Mhm.
but so those are my little feedbacks on everything you've said so far. This is
Mhm.
fascinating, Daga.
This is great, Matt. This is great. And thank you for that. And I think anything that can stimulate our curiosity and give us different perspective, and literature is definitely that. And I would argue that literature is much more beneficial and contributes so much more to our curiosity than TV or TV shows and anything that is that has already been invented by other people. And I'm happy for our listeners and our viewers to argue that. But I'm a great advocate of reading and literature and creating our own worlds and just following our own curiosity, which can be just sparked by stories and ideas of other people. Yeah. I would also
Yeah.
like to add a couple of things related to how curiosity can manifest in for different people. So curious doesn't have to be only curiosity in learning and acquiring knowledge. We can be just curious about humans and human relations, and if somebody is socially curious, that makes them a very good social. They create good relationships because of the authentic curiosity of how other people think and how they see the world and how they can relate to those people. And I would stress also the openness and authenticity in that, because there are two different things when somebody is curious and they ask questions, and when somebody is curious and they gossip behind somebody's back, right? The first attitude is much more conducive for creating solid and healthy relationships. The latter, it probably not so much, and it doesn't really feed and nurture our connections. And another thing is when somebody's curious how to solve certain problems. They see gaps or challenges in knowledge or how things work, and they very much focus on solving problems, right? So this would be also another way that people can be curious. And some people can be very joyful in their exploration, and maybe they are, maybe I would say the geniuses or the brilliant scientists, they find joy in their exploration, and they very often ask questions that nobody dares to ask, and they just challenge the fundamental assumptions, like the people who first challenged that, you know, the earth is not the center of the galaxy, but the sun is, right? It takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of imagination, and I would say it takes also a lot of joy to explore that what other people don't believe or don't agree with.
I want to bring up one of the four agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and that is don't make any assumptions. I think about that one a lot because let's say Copernicus said, I'm not really sure about this whole Earth is the center of the galaxy. That's an assumption that I'm not totally sure about. Let's just try to think about it a little more. And he started doing investigations and looking at the sky. I'm often baffled that people could learn so much about the sky without any special equipment. But he was able to come up with a lot of things because he didn't make any assumptions. But the truth is, I realize that I make so many assumptions about every single moment of my life when I'm eating food. Like, and is this poisoned? I'm assuming it's not. But it is a good thing to remind yourself of, like, don't make any assumptions. And I think this is something that we all get in trouble with. We see a friend do something, and we make all kinds of stories and assumptions about why they do that. And then we go off on these tangents and we create these long narratives, and then we're mad at them. We think they're a terrible person. Instead, we should just ask, like, why didn't you come to my birthday party? Oh, my mom was having surgery. Oh, wow. Okay. That's okay. That's terrible. I hope, is she okay? Right. There's just so much assumption that we make about the behavior. And I think a lot of people think they're smart because they're really good at, like, I saw them,
Mm,
look at me weird that one day, and that's why I know they didn't come to my birthday
mm,
party because they looked at me. They're mad at me because
mm.
I'm so much more successful or whatever. You start making up all these stories, and then if you just ask, and that's why I don't like to use my intuition to come up with lots of random stories about why people are doing things. I just say, I don't know. And if I really want to know, I'll ask them. But instead of making up a lot of stories.
That is brilliant. I love it, and thank you for bringing this up, because that need to explain everything and know the answer and assuming things leads to so many problems in relationships for us, that just staying with that I don't know and actually accepting, well, maybe it's not the most comfortable place to be in, that I don't know why somebody is behaving this or that, but certainly it's healthier for my mental balance and for the relationship with that person if I just leave it as it is and find out if I really need to. So yes, absolutely.
You don't have to know everything. I think that's the thing. It's like, let's just be okay with uncertainty and don't make up stories when we don't know.
So Beth, I am curious. How do you think you can apply curiosity in yoga?
Yoga is curiosity. The first thing is you're wondering about your body and how it can move. So when you go into a pose, you should bring your mind and really think about, like, what does it feel like to have my arm? Is it too high? Is it too low? What if I lift my shoulders up? What if I bring them down? And I think a good teacher will be cueing. Try this and try that and see if you move this way. Does that feel better? Tilting your pelvis forward, tilting it back. Bringing our mind into the body is curiosity. And so yoga is an experiment and you're trying things out. Being curious about how you feel and why is your arm more tight today can give you insights into maybe behaviors that you're doing habitually that are causing tension. So just noticing, like, oh, this shoulder is feeling tight. I wonder if I'm like lifting it up as I walk through the world. That was an exaggeration. Being curious about your internal state, being calm and feeling your emotions and listening to your thoughts. These are all things that I personally introduce every week for every class I teach, is taking the time to be curious about who you are today and doing lots of fun experiments. I mean, I'm all about bringing the fun. So noticing, looking around, and then softening the eyes, softening the muscles around the eyes, and just noticing how the world looks different when you change these little tiny things. It may just be a thought.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds fantastic. It definitely speaks to me. I would say, from my perspective, also, when I turn the focus on myself and my curiosity, and I ask myself that question, I wonder what happens when I do this, or what if I move like that, or what is it, how does it feel, etc. Then I stay with myself and I don't focus so much on the performance. And I think this also happens a lot in yoga class, or this is my experience at least, in some group classes that I've participated in, that, well, people just want to look good, or they want to do the asana the best way possible, etc. And I feel curiosity might be also an answer or a solution to that performance driven attitude in yoga towards the orientation, like how can I be there with myself, for myself.
I totally agree. I see the peer pressure and the competitiveness in my students, and they're pushing themselves into places where they shouldn't be. They're not ready for that. And then they end up injuring themselves. Not in my class because I'm really, really careful. And I go around and say, like, okay, let's try this other option and just see how that feels. So I'm really careful about it because I know that myself, as a type A person, I have been guilty of trying to compete and compare myself to other students. And I think a good teacher, which one of my teachers, Ann Dyer, I'll just do a call out for her. She's continually asking, like, how does this feel? Try this. And bringing us into our own body and our own mind is a way to stop the, my arm can't go that high, or my leg is not bent as far as the other person. Like, why?
Mm,
What is going on with my body
mm,
that is unique and special? So I totally agree. It's an antidote, and then it's much more healthy.
mm. Instead of judging ourselves, let's be curious what that means, right?
Let's be curious. We should put that on bumper sticker.
Let's do that.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, add a comment. If you like this, please share with a friend, and we'll see you next time.